Hey, hey, Spaceship One talking to Spaceship Two. I want to
Uh,
be Major Tom.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
We thought it might be fun to play a little with the theme since we're becoming a new company, Future Now Marketing. Thought it might be fun to just go ahead and tease it a little with a fun space themed background.
It's always good. Always good. And since we're talking about audiences today, I think that's a good deal. So we have, hopefully, we're going to have a big audience and we know our audience and we'll see. How's that go? Here we
Linda
go.
says she loves it.
All right. Yeah.
Thanks, Linda.
Thank you, Linda.
Live long and prosper.
Exactly. So here we go. We're going to talk about knowing your audience. Are you reaching your customers? And I actually have a really good story. I'm not quite sure exactly where I'm going to put it in, but there's going to be a good story coming in here in a minute about one of my coaching clients that is pretty remarkable. So we're gonna have some fun here.
Yeah, good.
So identifying your target audience. Wow. We can talk all day about this.
Yeah, no, we've definitely worked hard at understanding, for home service businesses, who their ideal target market is generally. But then we really, work with brands to be able to figure out exactly who their customer is more specifically in their local area. And you really have to think about it in both those ways, both, from the macro and the micro level in order to truly be effective. But I would venture to say that without this important step and following, doing what you can to identify and then target and reach your customers, your true customers, your best customers, then your marketing is never going to be as successful as it could be. And you're going to waste a lot of money throwing stuff at the wall to see what sticks. So this is bare bones 101 kind of stuff.
Yeah. I think the other thing that's real important is we all make assumptions when we talk about our audience. Oh yeah, I know who calls. I know who I talk to. Who's there when I get there. Yeah, I got it all figured out. I don't need to worry about that. I got it. Well, a story about Mark Stoner, because he lets us talk about him, which I really do appreciate. For the longest time, they thought their perfect customer was the females of the business. Well, come to find out, that wasn't true. Even though the females were normally ones that called, that were normally the ones that were there, what they found out when they started really digging in is, but the guys are the ones that made the decision. Call this person because they were at work or whatever, and somebody had to be there. Sometimes it was the men, sometimes it was the women. But I know in my family, Marilyn and I talk about stuff, and she's got a little bit more time with what she does most of the time than I do. And so she's like, yeah, I'll give them a call. We'll get it all scheduled. So it's interesting that how true that can become. And so, he started then changing his marketing. He didn't eliminate what he was doing to address the women that do make that decision, but he added some very masculine places that he started doing some marketing and advertising. So, he did the Bust a Move thing at the Predators, those kind of things that really, even though it was a lot of fun, it was really kind of towards the male audience. So those are the things you gotta have to think about. And sometimes you gotta dig a little bit to figure out who your audience is. Now that's just male and female. We haven't talked about age and all that kind of stuff, because there's a whole lot of other things that you have to look at. If you're an HVAC company and you do residential and not commercial, then you're probably have a very specific age range for people that have homes old enough that you want to work and service and whatever. So age plays a part. What you do plays a part. If you're a commercial business, you're going to look at apartments, who are traditionally in your, in the apartments. And do the apartments have individual things? Some do. Some actually. I was really shocked about that to find out that there are places when you rent an apartment, you're still responsible for the HVAC unit and all that kind of stuff. So you pay a lower rent, but you take on certain responsibilities. So those are all things that I think you have to look at.
Yeah, there's, broadly speaking, there's demographics, which are the things like male, female, age, area of town, expendable income, how many kids do they have? Do they have a dog or a cat? What kind of car do they drive? I mean, all of those things are like demographics that help to describe your target, your best prospect. But there's psychographics as well, which are interesting. Those are things like, how do people feel, right? Like that we get more into, are they more conservative? Are they, do they hold on to their money and try to do things, DIY? Or are they afraid of climbing up on roofs and doing things because, they've never had those kinds of experiences and they just know that they need to hire somebody to take care of it for them.
Mm-hmm.
And you may think that you're just looking for people for high net worth that don't want to do the work themselves, but you'd be surprised how many younger millennial type people who don't make a whole lot of money but have eked their way into their first home, how willing they are to hire somebody to come do it for them because they don't believe they have any business trying to do it themselves. They're just of a generation that when it's broken, you call somebody to fix it. So even though they may not have a lot of expendable income, they're more than willing to pay somebody to fix it. So understanding some of those dynamics are important. And you really won't know what your mix of people are that you want to reach until you do some of those studies to really find them.
No, and I think that's very true. And it's interesting because what a lot of people tell me is the younger generation, they haven't been raised like and do a lot of they don't have a lot of skill with tools, and now that's not all of them. I mean, I'm not saying all of them, but there's been people that in the home service industries that have hired these young guys, and they're having to teach them, the different tools, tool sets, and those kind of things. So if you are someone that's younger and you've grown up and not grown up around somebody that uses tools and teaches you how to do, use tools and all that, then you're just not comfortable with fixing certain things. So, I think that absolutely is a good point. And then let's talk about preferences, because I think, there are needs that we have. I mean, if my AC broke, I got to get that thing fixed, or, it's not going to be happy around here. Your house is the same way, Carter. The AC breaks, got to get it fixed ASAP. So that's a need. Sometimes they're just preferences. I prefer X over Y. And so, that's another thing. You could be in an industry that you really need to start zoning in on preferences, and never know what those preferences are until you start talking to people. So I think that's interesting.
No, it's true, and understanding what their preferences are is not only a key to attracting the kind of people that you want, but also the key to not pissing off the kind of people that you want.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you may think that everybody's like you and prefers to only deal with people that, share your same religious or political views. But not everybody's that way. In fact, a lot of people are, they don't even consider those things at all when making a service choice. So understanding preferences in your market, understanding how people feel about various things, as well as preferences just of like, how do they prefer to be communicated with? Do they prefer to get text messages or emails or phone calls or smoke signals or, direct mail? How do they prefer to be communicated with? When you can honor those preferences or stand out of the way of, not declaring something so that you alienate a large portion of the addressable or serviceable public, then you're again going a long way to making sure that you're going to be able to maximize your marketing spend.
Yeah, and one of the things I will say right here, when you're talking about preferences and you're talking about dealing with people, when your social media is talking about beliefs, political, all these kind of things, a lot of times you alienate people who would have hired you had they not seen some of the things you put on there. So I say that not to, I don't want to eliminate people's, I mean, you can put anything, what you want on there. And I'm not saying you shouldn't or you couldn't. I'm just saying, just know when you do that, you alienate people that might use your services. And so I just always like to say a little bit about social media here because so many of the time we think we're just talking to the people that we talk to. That's kind of in our bubble, if you will. But the truth is, there are a lot of people who not only search your business online, but will find the owner and search the owner. I've been amazed at how many people have said, I didn't do business with this person because I went and saw their Facebook page. I don't ever do that. So it was surprising to me. So, but I've had two people in the last year tell me that. So
no, I've heard the same thing, and it's telling. I'm not saying that they're right for doing that.
Yeah.
I mean, to blame someone for the personal views that they're sharing on their personal Facebook page, to hold that against them and decide not to do business with them seems a little ridiculous to me. But I know just as many people who are business owners that are like, well, F them. I don't care if I do business with them. If they don't like what I have to say, then I don't want to do business with them anyway, which I also think is ridiculous.
Yeah.
The stance that I've taken, and I know you've taken as well, is stay off social media in terms of personal beliefs and just don't go there so that, it doesn't become a problem for anybody who wants to work with me.
Yeah. I mean, I'm the same way. Nobody wants to hear what I say anyway, because it's not going to change anything. That's right. What I've decided.
Exactly.
By the way, I'm jealous because you have a dog on your spaceship and I don't.
Oh, you hear our dog?
Yeah.
That's Astro. I know.
So let's talk about reaching your audience effectively. This is really interesting because a lot of times you don't know if you're reaching your audience effectively or not. So how do you reach your audience effectively and figure out that you actually are reaching your audience?
Yeah, and this is one of those things where it's not always as simple as, well, just look at your, the likes.
Mm-hmm.
Or, see how many people watch your videos when you post.
Speaking of likes, if you're here, give us a thumbs up.
Yes, please. But it's not always that easy. It doesn't always translate quite the same way. Ultimately, I would say the only way if you're really connecting with people in a way that is material to the business is whether or not you're booking more phone calls, from and asking people and finding out where they first learned about you, or what sources of information about your company they engaged with before they made the phone call. And that's where you might find out that they watched that YouTube tutorial video you did and really appreciated the insight, and the time you took to explain things in layman's terms, and they decided they'd go ahead and give you a call to do the job. You may find those things out. So that's the most direct way I know of to do it. But there are some other ways as well. When your customers start telling you that they appreciate you answering all of their questions, then that you're getting ahead of them ever even asking the questions. You're providing good information somewhere, somehow, whether it's your website or your marketing materials or videos or social media posts or things like that are answering a lot of the questions that they would be asking if they just called you up blind. So that's another way whether or not your efforts are connecting with people.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that's good. So now I'm going to tell my story, at least part of it. Then I'll finish it with another little section. So one of my coaching clients is a plumber, And when we first started, when I first started working with him, he had really two things that he was really struggling with. And he needed some help, not only with some various marketing thing, but the real problem he was having is he couldn't figure out if it was working or not. I mean, he just didn't, he's like, we're doing this other thing and this and this and this, but I don't know if it's working. I don't know if we're reaching people. I have zero idea of what's going on. And so come to find out, no tracking numbers, no landing pages, wasn't getting information from his marketing company so that he could track things. And just recently, we've got him in a situation where he's tracking pretty much everything that he can track. The two things that are really difficult to track is radio and TV.
Yeah.
So, TV is tough. Sometimes you can put a phone number there, radio, phone number, but most people, if they hear your name, they go to your website and then they're calling in there. Anyway, so then we're going to get down here in a minute to talk about measuring and adjusting your strategies, and I'll finish the story then. So just say we got all the tracking stuff, where it's actually working, and then I'm pausing to go to this. Reaching the Gen Z buyer. All right, here's me. I know I'm a boomer, and I know there's millennials and Gen Z and all those things. I think people are people, and so maybe I'm just fooling myself, but I'm a little lost on this one. So you're going to have to help me, Carter. Why is it different to reach a Gen Z buyer as it is to reach anybody else?
Well, okay, lots of reasons. Number one, they congregate in different places than other consumers. So, if you're just advertising a message to Facebook trying to reach Gen Z, you're not connecting with those people in large numbers at all. So that's number one. That makes the most sense. But also, Gen Z listens to different cues than other consumers of different generations. They are, the questions they ask about who they should be buying from are informed by their peer group in different ways than other generations. A boomer, for example, would say, I'm going to walk over next door and ask my neighbor who they just used to do their pest control. Gen Z would never cross their mind. I mean, maybe they know who their neighbor is next door, but bother them with my personal, needs. I mean, no, I would never do that. So instead they would be like, looking in other places, looking for social proof from those places where it's readily available, getting tuned into who they should be buying from based on what they can find in those trusted places that they utilize. And those can be very different places. I'm not saying I know where all of those places are, by the way. Gen Z is.
That was going to be my question. So where are they?
Yeah, it's not a primary target for us or for our clients, quite honestly. It's Gen Z is still a little too young for home ownership. And, there are some that are able to do that, but most of them that are of home buying age are just starting careers and, trying to figure out how to save money to do that. So they'll be home buyers in another 5 to 10 years. But so I haven't spent a whole lot of time understanding Gen Z specifically, but I will say that, the buying signals that they look for are very different. The kinds of authenticity and transparency that they expect from the companies that they work with are off the charts. I mean, they need to trust the message. If it gets salesy and, if it smacks of marketing at all in the traditional sense, then, it not necessarily a turn off, but not a turn on, not a, it's just deaf. They're just deaf to it. They've grown up in a world where, they've experienced 3,000, 5,000, 7,000 touches a day from marketing materials in their world. Just bombarding them all day long, flying at them like well, to use a space metaphor, seems apropos today, like flying through the galaxy at warp speed. I mean, they're just, the stars just vroom, 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 traveling by, right? I mean, so when you're that exposed to marketing messages, you become desensitized to it, you become numb to it, and standing out in that really becomes much more difficult. And authenticity and transparency is one of those things that can help you stand out, but not just making your marketing material more authentic and transparent. It means marketing in almost wholly different ways. Gen Z is going to be a defining generation for what's coming in marketing and advertising. And I think AI is going to play an important part of how we reach Gen Z. But it's going to be in a way that gives a lot of transparency into businesses and the way that they operate.
Well, and so now I'm going to have to learn more stuff.
Yeah, sorry.
That means that's what that means. All right, fine. I'll learn more stuff. Okay, measuring and adjusting strategies. So I'm going to go back to my story. So what happens is all of a sudden when you start understanding who is coming from where, all right, you're measuring, okay? So you have to be able to track as much as you can so that you can measure. You cannot measure if you're not tracking. You cannot say, well, I think there's more females than males that call, unless somebody's actually tracking. Do you really know that? Or in this case, how many people actually click on that email? How many people actually call and do business from that email? How many people come from the radio? How many people are coming from the postcards that are sent out every month? How many people are coming to the website? How many people are coming to all these things? So until you measure, you cannot adjust. Most people adjust because they go, I don't think that's working. And then they move on. So my coaching client, what he found out, he's been doing emails forever. I mean, like 6 years, a monthly email. He has 4,000 people on his list. Now, that's not a lot of people when you look at it. That's all he's got, 4,000 people. So he's recently found out, after looking at some things, 1,300 people opened the email. Out of that, about, I think, 15 or 16 clicked on it, okay? And he got a little work off of it. But what we've been talking about is in marketing, very rarely do people come in at first touch. Very rarely. They get an email or they see a truck or they see a yard sign, and all of a sudden they're on Google Business Profile. They're checking out your reviews. Then they go to your website, and then, all these different places. So what he did, he said, I took everybody that did not click through, I took all of their emails with my CRM and we cross-referenced it. And when he did, instead of getting 1 in April, his return 383,000 to 1.
Wow.
He made over $100,000 when he thought he got 1. So you can't just measure the end. You have to figure out how to cross-reference and how to figure, those kind of things when they come in. And I'm sorry that more people aren't on this right now, and I hope they listen to the podcast, because it is so absolutely imperative that you track and measure your marketing. And so what we talked about is when he finds those other things that aren't working, all of a sudden he can put that money somewhere else and test something else. So he doesn't have to keep doing that. But here's what he said. He asked me, he goes, I think we're going to double down and send maybe an email a week, or maybe, at least 2 emails a month. And I said, no, you don't want to do that. And he's like, why? And I said, because you're going to send too many emails. And then people are going to start opting out and they're going to like you anymore. I said, you've got a really good pace, one a month. You've been doing it forever. So what you really need to do is figure out, how do I go out and get more emails? Because the money's in the list.
Yeah.
The money's always in the list.
And the content. I mean, that's the two ways I would improve it is grow my list and really focus on with 4,000 people, you can do some A/B testing, test one message against another, get really sharp with the messages that you're presenting until you're getting even more of a return for every.
We've not gotten into that yet. I got somebody that's measuring and tracking. I'm good. And right now I've got a home run.
They just got religion, right? So we don't need to make them a priest overnight.
That's right. We're getting there. I've got notes, I promise. But yeah, that's really the thing. So, adjust your strategies. If something's really, really working though, don't overdo. That was one of the things I think that I've seen people do. They go, oh, that works so well. Let's just send more. And people get really tired and they're going to say, unsubscribe and get me out of here.
Yep.
So, yeah. So those are the kinds of things that you have to start with when you're talking about your audiences, because you may be identifying the wrong thing. If he just looked at the one, he would have totally made a wrong conclusion. So really have to be careful when we're measuring, when we're looking at it, making sure that we're not overlooking some of the places that we need to be. So
even the businesses that have done a really good job of, or business owners that feel very, very connected to their business and feel like they've got their finger on the pulse. It's amazing to me how many of them rely on anecdotal evidence to make business decisions about where to spend money, about who to hire, about, a lot of different things. That's just not, it doesn't bear up when you look at the data, and we're guilty of it too. I know I'm guilty of it, but we tend to over or underestimate on a lot of things, like, how many, I had an example just a minute ago. Now I can't think of it, but we tend to want to say, oh, well, like closing rate, for example. Oh, well, my guys are, they're closing at probably 50, 60%, and then they actually look at the numbers of how many open estimates are still in their business that have never closed. And they start doing the math and they start actually tracking how many estimates their guys are closing. And they start realizing it's more like 18 to 20%, 25%. And they're like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. And, again, we've said it before. We used to say it back in the day with Blue Collar Proud Show. You cannot improve what you do not measure.
That's right.
Unless you're measuring and tracking, you're just not going to know really for sure whether or not all those anecdotal feelings that you have about, are pointing to that one example and thinking that that's the representation of the way it is across all of your business. It's a faulty way of making good business decisions.
The other thing is do the math. I mean, if you've got a closing rate, say that's 12%, 12, 15%, and some people do. I mean, I've seen it. And you're thinking, oh, I got to get more people. I got to get more people. Just stop for a minute and think, what if I increase my closing rate by 10%? What would that look like? What if I increased it by 15%? What would that look like? And so, a lot of times we're trying to say more, when really that's good. Here's where we need to work. Yeah. This is the increase here.
If we focused on making, that better, we wouldn't be chasing our tails and adding, a lot more work to do. We'd be doing the same amount of work for the same amount of clients, but getting more results by closing more of them. And that's how you get ahead. That's where profit is.
Yeah, and I see that in close rate, and I also see that in follow-ups on open estimates. Two places that, man, if you just concentrate on those two places, man, you can knock it out of the park.
for sure.
So it's just some of the deals. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this. I know a lot of people don't like talking about this kind of stuff because it's the numbers. So anytime we get into the numbers, which I love, everybody else, I see this, like kind of a deal. So, but I really do enjoy the numbers. I admit it.
Well, listen, I don't know. I won't be here next week because I have a scheduled meeting that I won't be available. So I think this might be the last Spark Marketer Spark Live for me anyway. Are you going to do it next week or not?
I've got some other things as well. So I'm going into getting all the things wrapped up. So yeah, I was figured this would be the last one. We have not figured out yet the new name or when we're going to start, but I think I'm hoping we'll be back in July. And
we've got to put our heads together, come up with the strategy for this. We've got a lot of merger activities that are still going on, and we need to shepherd those through responsibly for our crew and for our clients.
Yep.
So as soon as we can turn our attention to this and rebrand and relaunch as Future Now Marketing, then we're going to be really excited. And it will be a focus on future technologies of marketing that are already available for you now. I wrote this down earlier today as a mission statement. I'm taking a chance of just blurting it out, but we haven't settled on the final mission statement for Future Now Marketing. But I kind of like this: making AI marketing accessible, effective, and human-centered for small businesses.
I like that.
So, I mean, that's definitely at the heart, whether it ends up being our official marketing.
Yeah, it is at the heart of what we're doing.
It's at the heart of what we're doing, and absolutely wanting to bring value to people using tools that can save them a lot of time, a lot of effort, create better experiences for customers.
Hey, and Ray, thank you so much for the thumbs up. Really appreciate. Glad you're here. Spark Live is also released as a podcast on Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, Podvine, or your favorite player. And next week, we won't be here. So I don't have anything. So,
goodbye for now. We'll see you in the
now.
next galaxy and on from there.
See you later, guys. Have a great rest of your week and wonderful Memorial Day.
Yeah.